Hi, everybody, and welcome to Psychology in 10 Minutes. I'm David B. Feldman. As you may have heard, the podcast is now available also in video. So if you are listening to the audio only version of this podcast, consider heading on over to youtube.com/at psychology in 10 minutes. That's youtube.com/the psychology in 10 minutes. And while you're over there, please like and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified of all the new video content that I produce when it comes out. Well, I thought that today I'd talk a little bit about my recent obsession with my cat. I'm not quite as obsessed with him as I am with Star Wars or Star Trek for that matter, but still pretty obsessed. About a year ago, in the midst of all of the ongoing problems in our world, and also in the midst of some difficulties in my own life, I decided to go out and adopt a cat. He's super cute. He's gray with white stripes and a little white belly. He's also quite a menace and routinely attacks my feet. But honestly, whether he's curled up in my lap purring or stalking me from across the room, he's a real charmer. About 2 months after I adopted him, I was speaking with a very good friend of mine on the phone. It had been a long while since we had talked, and so she made a really interesting observation. She told me that I seemed calmer and happier than usual. Now, I should admit that I'm a high anxiety person. It's something that I've had to learn to live with over the years. It seems like I'm always stressed out about something. And of course, there are plenty of things in our world to be stressed out about right now. So it surprised me to hear that she thought I was happier than usual. But the more I thought about it, the more she was totally right. Since my new furry little friend had come into my life, I was a bit happier than usual. Now, I'm not saying that having a pet is some kind of panacea. It's not like if everyone in the world adopted a cat or a dog, that all of our world's problems would magically go away, nor would the problems in my own life. I wish it were that simple. And also, I should acknowledge that not everyone likes animals, and that's perfectly fine. But it's something that most pet owners will tell you. We don't only help our pets, but they also help us. And that's not just my opinion. It's backed up by some pretty good science. So in this episode, I'm going to give you 4 ways, backed up by the research, that having pets is good for our mental and physical health. Way number 1, the stress buffer with dander. I have to say that spending time with my cat is powerfully stress relieving. I'm sure that dog owners would say the same thing. In fact, new research from Washington State University shows that just 10 minutes with a pet can make a big difference. They took 250 or so college students and randomly assigned them to one of 4 experimental conditions. The first group actually spent time petting and cuddling with cats and dogs, about 10 minutes. The second group actually stood by and watched as others spent time with animals. The third group merely looked at photos of animals, and the fourth group basically did nothing. They simply sort of waited around. Now, what I love about this study was the way they measured stress. They actually used a saliva swab to gather samples and then tested for cortisol levels. Cortisol is a hormone associated with stress. What I love about this is that so often in social science research, we limit ourselves to self-report measures of the way people are feeling. And don't get me wrong, it's good to know how people perceive their own emotions. But nonetheless, let's face it, people can sometimes lie or even be self-deceived about how they're feeling. So it's really pretty special that this study used an objective biological measure of stress. And the results were pretty clear. The group of people who actually spent time with the animals had the steepest reduction in cortisol levels. And by the way, this isn't the only study to show that there's a relationship between time spent with pets and lower stress. So, next time you're feeling stressed out, maybe one of the best things you could do is curl up with a fuzzy little creature. Way number two, fuzzy little matchmakers. In addition to being powerfully stress relieving, animals, and especially dogs, for reasons that will become apparent in a second, also bring people together. When we go out and walk our animals, other people tend to stop and say hi, and sometimes introduce their animals to ours. And sometimes these actually turn into friendships. That's the conclusion of a research study by folks at the University of Western Australia. They did a large scale phone survey in 4 cities across Australia and the United States. And they found that pet owners were 60% more likely to know their neighbors than non pet owners. And often they were actually friends. Now, I'm sorry to say for cat lovers like me out there, but it was dog owners that got the majority of the benefits here, at least in 3 of the 4 cities. And it's probably obvious why. People tend to walk their dogs. So I guess that's just incentive for us to go out and walk our cats. Way number three, personal trainers who stop to pee on fire hydrants. While we're out walking our dogs, we're also getting exercise. In fact, the American Heart Association recommends pet ownership, and particularly dog ownership, as a way of encouraging people to exercise, which of course is good for our hearts. It's also good for our emotions because exercise releases endorphins that causes us to feel good. Of course, we don't need pets to get exercise. Lots and lots of research studies not involving pets at all show a powerful link between exercise and both physical and emotional health. In fact, 2 large-scale meta-analytic studies, which are basically very large studies combining the data from a bunch of smaller studies, show that regular exercise predicts lowered symptoms of depression. Of course, when and if we're depressed, we don't much feel like getting up, getting out, and exercising, and that's where dogs can come in. Because when they bug us and bug us and bug us to take them out walking, it gives us a little incentive to get out and get active ourselves. Of course, there's also goat yoga, but that feels like a topic for another day. Way number four, party planners with tails. In addition to getting us exercise, dogs and cats give us something else. They give us a routine. Basically, they give us something to do. Most animals are creatures of habit, whether we're talking about dogs, cats, hamsters, or anything else for that matter. They like to get up at a certain time, go to sleep at a certain time, eat at a certain time, and even play at a certain time. And that sort of forces us to be on a routine as well. And one of the things that most mental health professionals will tell you is that routine is good for our emotional well-being. In fact, there are many studies that show that regularizing our sleep times and wake times can make a big difference if we suffer from insomnia, one of the most common problems brought to psychotherapists' offices. There are other studies that show, in a more general sense, regularizing our schedule can help with depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and other conditions as well. I try to remind myself of all of this when the cat wakes me up every morning at 6 a.m. sharp by sitting on my face. So there you have it, folks. 4 reasons, backed by science, that pets are good for our emotional and physical health. Now, as I said at the beginning of this episode, it's not as if owning a pet is going to magically solve all the problems in our lives. But nonetheless, it can make a little difference. At least that's been my experience, which is good because honestly, the cat is not going to leave me alone anyhow. And if you have a furry friend, Leave me a comment and let me know their name and how they've changed your life. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you have any questions about psychology or suggestions for topics that I should do in future episodes of the podcast, leave those in the comments as well. And while you're here, please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Of course, thank you to my supporters, my patrons, and those of you who have bought me a virtual coffee. It means a lot to me. It shows that you care about me and that you care about the podcast. And honestly, that's what keeps me going. Plenty of information and links for how to do that, and lots of other information about the show can be found below this video. And as always, thank you for being here with me.